Okay, up next we have roll call. Everybody start voting, please. Holly?
All counselors present and a quorum has been declared.
Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is the agenda approval.
Mayor, if there's no questions on the agenda, I'll move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Okay. Start voting, everyone. Okay, Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is citizen comment. I have one comment card, and if you would like to come up to the podium, say your name, and we ask that you keep your comments below 3 minutes, and if comments go over 3 minutes, I will interrupt. Thank you. We have Mr. Don Thompson.
Mayor and council, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I live at 924 8th Street in Alamosa. I'm the corresponding secretary for historic preservation, and I know it's been some time since the Historic Preservation Committee has come and talked to council. The sheet that I'm passing out shows a few of the buildings that we have designated within the last century, somewhat recently. And on the back of that, I've listed all of the designated properties in Alamosa, and at the bottom with a question mark, I have the one that's on the agenda for this evening. We like to stress some of the advantages of historic preservation. I heard a comment just recently that we only have a couple of empty storefronts on Main Street here in Alamosa, and I like to think that the historic structures that we have play towards that, making our downtown area both unique and inviting to the public. One of the more recent ones, the Square Peg, had been put on the list years ago, and they took out some of the more recent addition to make the Square Peg really more historically accurate than it had been, and did a very nice job of taking our plaque that the city purchases and putting it in a prominent location on the Square Peg. They were proud to be listed as one of the historic properties. When you get to the issue of designating the Wayside building, of course, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And I'd like to thank Jan for being such a good council liaison with our committee. We do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I don't have any other comment cards, so we'll allow for any follow-up. Anyone? Okay, thank you. The next item we have on the agenda is consent calendar A. As I mentioned in the prior meeting, I will not go through all the items on consent calendar A, so I'll accept the motion.
Mayor, I think that's a great idea. Keep it up. I move that we approve consent calendar A.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Let's start voting. Okay, Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is our regular business brought forth by city staff. The first item, number 1, is Resolution 2-1 1018, placing the Wayside Stage Stop on the Alamosa Register of Historic Places.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
As Don stated, we have received a request to replace Wayside on the city's Register of Historic Places. Wayside is a building that predates the city of Alamosa and is part of the cluster of buildings near the Maddox Dairy on the city's ranch property. The Historic Preservation Committee held a public hearing and has forwarded a recommendation to the council to approve the resolution before you this evening. Are there any questions?
Okay, do we have any questions? Councilor Vigil?
I don't have a question, just a comment. Would like to thank the HPAC for all their diligent work. They've had 2 or 3 work sessions over the last month coming up with this to present to you all tonight. They've looked at, again, they looked at an audit that happened a couple months ago. They have been looking diligently at other properties that they can bring before you and try to get on the historical preservation list. And I just appreciate their hard work for what they do. I know it's a, we might take it for granted, but a lot of people visit cities and towns across our country based on the number of historical sites we have. And the more we can get on there, the more our town becomes attractive to other people. So thank you, Don, and your group.
Thank you, Councilor Vigil. Councilor Griego and Councilor Daniel, you're up next.
I'm up next? Okay, thank you, Mayor. I had a question and a comment. My question, where this is located on North River Road, if you go down the street a little bit and you come into the city where we've established the disc golf and all that, there's also a stagecoach deal there that I guess eventually somebody's gonna maintain it. Has anybody ever looked into that, no?
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, as you go in that road that takes you into where your disc golf and now your archery, if you look to the left, there's an area there where I think that building's been here longer than that one, according to talking to some of the older guys. But and I don't know what constitutes. How old does a building have to be in order to get into something like this?
On the state register and on the national register, it has to be 50 years or older.
50 years.
But clearly with Don sitting here and Dan here, we can pass on that question to have them take a look at that location and see if there's a structure there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Daniel,
Thank you, Mayor.
you're welcome.
The pictures, so thank you for the pictures. They're very helpful to me. I know now I have seen this. I am wondering, with this designation, would we be able to restore any of this? Would that make it easier for that to happen? Are we worried about maintaining the building with its current, at least, I mean, it looks like it might need some support.
Getting this building placed on the city's register makes it eligible for some grants that we wouldn't otherwise be able to apply for to help in the restoration of the structure.
Councilor Vigil,
Thank you. I would like to move that we approve resolution number 2-20, number 2-1018. Is that right?
It should be.
Yeah, 2018, number 2-2018, placing the Wayside Stage Stop located at 6349 North River Road, Alamosa, Colorado, on the Alamosa Registry of Historic Places per the request from the HPAC.
I second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Councilor Brohl?
No, I appreciate the history. I think it's a great history. I think it'll add to the city of Alamosa in this area, so good job.
Thank you.
I also would like to thank the team who works with the Historic Preservation Group. You all do a lot of detailed work in history and research, and you do a thorough job when you identify these buildings. I really appreciate that. And what I would hope that eventually down the road that maybe that particular area will qualify for some funding so we can make that like a tourist site for people to come and stop by and visit, kind of like what Councilor Vigil mentioned earlier. And I think that would add to that part in that area to where we have other activities going on. I also would like to just thank Councilor Vigil as well, because I've heard a lot of good positive things about his involvement in the Historic Preservation Board, and really greatly appreciate that time and effort you've been putting into that. Thank you so very much. Any further questions, comments? All right, start voting. Okay, Ms. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda falls up under finance. It's the first reading of ordinance number 3-2018, amending in part the city's pay plan, ordinance 32-2017, adding a GIS analyst position to the grade 11 pay grade.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Both of these items under finance are pretty much considered housekeeping. The first one I'll cover. We had a vacancy in our GIS position, which brought to light when we looked at making an offer that when we adopted the ordinance with our budget, it somehow got left off at grade 11. We did attach to the council agenda the 2017 pay plan to show this actually did exist. We're not creating it out of the blue, and it was in grade 11. And so this is just to add that back in, since the city manager does not have the authority to hire for positions outside of what that pay plan is. It is important for us to correct it, and since the pay plan was approved by an ordinance, we have to make a change by an ordinance. And so that's what's before you tonight.
Thank you, Heather.
Good evening, council. My issue is a housekeeping relative to...
Just, so let us finish this one,
Oh,
and
sorry.
then we'll go to the next
Oh, I'm
item.
sorry.
Sorry, Judy.
Right. Council, any questions or comments? Okay, what are your wishes? Councilor Daniel?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we approve ordinance number 3/2018 and set the item for public hearing on first reading and set the item for public hearing for February 7th, 2018 at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Hensley?
So I'm just reading, and maybe I shouldn't even, so I'm reading the attachment, and just on other things, I noticed that there's things being paid at $9 an hour, so will that be adjusted to the new minimum wage?
Are you looking at the ordinance or at the 2017? Because the 2017 would be outdated.
Okay, I was just looking at the attachment, so, okay. That was attached to this showing,
I believe that's the 2017.
It was the
ordinance.
Yeah, that's the
2017.
2017.
Got it,
So
okay.
for 2018, we did
Nope, we're good.
increase it to be
Thank you.
compliant.
I didn't see the 2017 on the attachment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. We've had discussion. Okay, please start voting. Okay, Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. The next item under finance is resolution number 4-2018, known as the fourth budget amendment. Descriptive wording should be added to supplement resolution 26-2017, known as the third budget amendment, in order to clarify funds budgets. Is that you?
Oh, good evening, council. When council approved the third budget amendment in December, in the revenue portion of the general fund, I did describe that did list that we were moving money from the capital reserve fund to the general fund to pay for expenditures that we were going to incur in 17, which was the fire apparatus and some other things that were listed. What I failed to do was show council how that affected the capital reserve budget, and so that's what this line item shows, the amount, the change that actually occurred in that line item of the budget. So you did approve the expenditure or the transfer in that resolution, but it's not clarified how that affected the capital reserve fund, which those expenditures were money that we had been saving for the past several years for those expenditures, like the fire truck and the fire apparatus. So I just wanted to make that clear to the council, how that affected the reserve fund.
So it's not changing the amounts, it's not changing anything like that, it's just making sure that while the language was clear on what the expenses were, we didn't make it as clear to what it was doing to that other fund balance.
So I thought, out of respect for the council, that should be brought forward, so.
Okay, thank you so very much for the
Okay,
clarification. Council, any comments? Councilor Griego?
Well, if there's no other comments, I'll go ahead and make the motion that we pass resolution number 4, 2018.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Carson, any discussion? Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Start voting, please. Okay, Ms. Hawley,
The motion carried unanimously.
thank you very much. The next item is under Parks and Recreation, Resolution Number 3-2018, accepting the grant agreement with the Great Outdoors Colorado to implement the Inspire initiative as part of the Alamosa Rio Inspire Coalition. Andy,
All right, thank you, Mayor.
you're welcome.
So we have a resolution and an ordinance before you tonight, both dealing with the Inspire grant. The resolution is basically just accepting the grant agreement with GOCO. And I'll give a little bit of background, just be brief, but just to fill you in and for some of you who might not know. So we have 7 core partners in the Rio Coalition, including the city, San Luis Valley Great Outdoors, the Boys and Girls Club, Adams State University, Rio Grande Watershed Education Initiative, Rio Grande Farm Park, and the Rio Grande Rattlers mountain bike team. And SLV Great Outdoors is the coordinating agent for this grant, and the city is the fiscal agent. But for the city specifically, it's the outdoor recreation specialist position, expanded weekends on the Rio programming, and some trail work all throughout the city. Any questions on the resolution?
Councilor Broll.
So how much is the city getting from that grant?
As the fiscal agent, 886,000 is coming in. The city directly is getting about 235,000.
235.
Yes, sir.
And who's the fiscal agent? I mean, who's going to administer it?
The city is.
You?
Parks,
Oh,
yep,
you?
the city. And well, Finance Department and Parks and Recreation, yes.
So financing you, and you're capable of managing it.
Yes, yeah, it's, that's one of the reasons these are before you is dealing with that kind of money and 7 community partners that makes it so important to formalize responsibilities and the fiscal components to the grant. So hence a resolution and an ordinance here tonight.
Okay. Councilor Griego, Councilor Vihil up next.
Right along the same comments as Councilor Broyles, are we going to get paid to administer this? This is a big grant, and you just listed 7 partners out there that we're going to be responsible that they pull money and do the right thing with the money and all this other stuff.
My time and others' time is kind of an in-kind match for the grant. So you're familiar with those GOCO grants. We're often looking at a cash match and an overall match. And so our time involved in administering it is considered some of the match.
And the answer as well is involved with that. A lot of people are getting paid in those different areas. It shows the in-kind. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
It shows the in-kind and then some of the money matches. But as you go through the description and stuff, people are getting paid to administer, I guess, their part. And sometimes in dealing with grants, I know they kind of fret on that. They usually want the whole money to go towards whatever the project is, and not so much to administrative part. So that's why I asked the question: Are we getting paid?
And obviously, I know the city component's a little bit more, and
Yeah.
the majority of the funding from GOCO for us is paying for that outdoor recreation specialist, and then clearly it's For the city, as you know, it's not paying
Sure,
any of
sure.
us anything.
No, but I just wanted to point that out because,
Yeah.
you know, in looking at some of those other partners, if you look at directors getting paid this much, so many people are getting $10 an hour, blah, blah, this, and
Yeah.
stuff like that, so.
Well, and we may want to take a closer look at that spreadsheet, because I know sometimes looking at it, there's confusion in regards to what's the in-kind and what is paying for from the grant perspective
Okay.
too. Because I know there's a few times I was asking some questions and I was actually getting turned around on the in-kind versus what the grant's actually paying for.
Okay. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you. Counselor Vihil, then Counselor Daniel, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
I just want to tell you, Andy, thank you, and the whole team for bringing this amount of money into our valley, for the over $200,000 that it's going to go directly to this town to enhance outdoor recreation. My question is, in your communication here, you say expand the weekends on the Rio, you know, stuff going on at the Rio over, what specifically are we talking about here? Because I'm also the liaison with the Rio Grande Farm Park, and they do a lot of that programming, and they tell us that they are having a lot of success with the paddle boarding and that type of stuff. What else can we do out there?
Well, basically, it means the city is taking over from the Local Foods Coalition, putting on weekends on the Rio. As part of the grant, we're going to be able to get a little more equipment to expand paddleboarding. There's yoga in the park. There's a pump track, so cycling on the little track in Cole Park. I know I'm forgetting a component or two, but it's kind of using our resources to grow this thing even more and still have some assistance. We have set a meeting with the Farm Park and the Local Foods Coalition already to start planning for next year's weekends on the Rio. But to answer your question directly, we're taking over weekends on the Rio, Parks and Rec, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot of little components, as you said, so we're going to start working on that now.
Counselor Daniel,
Thank you.
Counselor Hensley, you're up next.
Andy, this is fantastic. I know Inspire, this has been a long, long process, so way to hang in there. Oh, good job.
Yeah.
I think the question I have after I thought about it, and it wasn't in our, the attachments, and so I didn't know with all of the partners, one of the things that I think has been successful when I've done grants in the past is having MOUs with everyone. Do we have formal agreements with each partner about their responsibilities as well?
So all the partner responsibilities have been rolled into one MOU, and that is the ordinance that is your next document. And because it's because Adams State and the city are government entities, that's why it has to be done by ordinance. Normally, we probably would have just done a resolution or something. But again, with so many partners involved in this, so important to define responsibilities and deliverables based on the grant. So
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't jump ahead. I apologize.
no problem.
Thank you. Counselor Hensley?
Well, I also think this is very exciting. I think this aligns with our long-term plans where outdoors is such a huge component that our community members said they wanted. It also lends itself to the partnerships and the collaboration between so many different entities and organizations within the San Luis Valley. And so I think it's a great grant that we got, and I think it leads to a lot of fantastic things for our community, and also from an economic development standpoint. It's another foundation, another step that's going to help to continue to grow. So thank you so much for your hard work.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Counselor Carson?
Andy, quick question. Where did we fall in as far as the match for the city? Just to clarify this, am I looking at the 399? We fell in between the 399 and the 159, correct? As far as a total match?
I don't have the total, but I could hit on some of the matches for you. One, like on the trails component, is $8,000 in crusher fines. On the outdoor rec program, it's $51,000. That really is already appropriated to the Boys and Girls Club and Alma programming. We can certainly go into more depth on that
In regards to when we made the application for the grant, in addition to the money that was already historically budgeted for Alma and the Boys and Girls Club, if we would have been at 100%, council had approved $100,000 for our cash match. Since it got reduced down to this level, that cash requirement was removed. So the cash, the requirement that Andy's talking about, the $51,000, is what we do for our outside funding for Alma and the Boys and Girls Club. So we're able to leverage those funds to use as a match for this grant.
Okay, so that was able to be included? So we were right at like 108 probably is what we had to come up with?
You might be
We're
referring.
not coming up with
Oh.
any cash match. We're able to use the $51,000 that's for the Alma and the Boys and Girls Club. The overhead is thrown into there. Go ahead, Andy, I'm sorry.
Well, they're listed, I believe, on the trails budget as $75,000. That is Lore Foundation money. That is kind of a pass-through. We're going to use that. It's not ours. It's being held with the Local Foods Coalition, but it's being used as match. And it says it's under partner match, and it's a little confusing. I even think it might be on the city line item, but Heather's right in terms of the 51,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Carson. Any further comments?
And for the record, we did not intentionally make the spreadsheet confusing. We had to use the spreadsheet provided to us. So we apologize for the confusion.
Mayor, if there's no further questions, I'll make the motion that we pass Resolution Number 3, 2008, accepting the grant agreement with the Great Outdoors Colorado to implement the Inspired Initiative as part of the Alamosa Rio Inspired Coalition. So I read the whole thing instead of.
I'll
Thank you.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'll just have one comment. Andy, it was great to see you and the community partners collaborating in the meeting that we had last week. A lot of the ones, and I believe it was the Rio Grande Revitalization meeting that you had. And it's so wonderful to see everyone in the community from different parts of our community actually coming together for a common goal, which is good for the entire community. And just to see the kids out last week as well as the adults, it really means a lot. The one thing that I'm really proud of is that I actually can see us staying true and sticking to what we have in our comprehensive plan by working together as a team and working on grants like this. $235,000 towards the city's project. Our community will begin to see the results of our efforts, and I thank you, your team, and all of the community partners. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, start voting, please. Ms. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. The next item under Parks and Recreation, the first reading of ordinance number 2-2018, an ordinance approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Alamosa Rio Coalition, apportion responsibilities with respect to a GOCO Inspired grant. Andy,
Thank you, Mayor.
you're welcome.
This is the first ordinance I've done, so I'd like to publicly thank Eric for his help on that. He was a major help. So again, this is formalizing and defining our responsibilities within the grant among all the partners. And that with 7 different entities. This is a requirement of the grant from GOCO, and then it's also just a prudent step in management of the grant, making sure the partners do what they say they're going to do. So any questions on the MOU or the ordinance?
Okay, Councilor Vigil?
I don't have any questions. And Mr. Grego, do you have a question?
Yes, I did.
Okay, Councilor Griego, we'll allow you to go with your question,
Okay.
please.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome, sir.
You talk about the leadership team implementing this, and I kind of spoke to the city manager earlier about this. And I know is it an individual out of each one of those 7 groups and that are going to kind of make sure that this is successful clear through June 2021?
Yes, yep, an individual from each organization. And, you do deal with a little bit of change within organizations. For example, the Boys and Girls Club.
Sure.
Will be under new leadership. But we've already met with their new leadership, and they're on board with the MOU and leading this project. Every entity is so excited for this thing that they're stepping up to take on their responsibilities and formally acknowledge that.
I think the other item that makes this exciting is this isn't the only project that these entities are partnering on. It's actually amazing what's going on in the community and the collaboration that's going on and these people working together on
forward.
multiple projects.
Thank you, Andy.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Councilor Vihel?
Mayor, I move that we adopt alternative 1, approving on first reading the ordinance authorizing the mayor to sign the intergovernmental agreement for the Gold Coast grant between the Alamosa Rio Coalition Partners for the Alamosa Rio Inspire project and setting the matter for a public hearing on February 7th, 2018 at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, start voting, please.
Thank you, Council.
Okay, Ms. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda falls up under City Manager Legal. The first reading of ordinance number 1-2018, an ordinance amending sections 1 through 17, 1 through 18, 3 through 10, and 13 through 54 of the codes of ordinances of the City of Alamosa concerning penalties for ordinance violations.
Thank you, Mayor. Those sections are dashes rather than
Dashes.
throughs, so it's
Okay.
13-54, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
And those are called out specifically because the general concepts involved in what we've been calling the decriminalization ordinance address each of those particular existing ordinance sections and repeal and replace by revising the language in there. So as you will recall, we've had 2 work sessions on these issues. Attached in the materials were or are red line versions of each of those ordinance provisions showing what the changes are to the existing ordinance accomplished by the new ordinance, the new decriminalization ordinance. Just a brief highlight, and we've discussed this before, but what this does primarily is takes jail off of the table for most ordinance violations within the City Code of Ordinances. Excuse me, except for a handful, I think 16 of them we have suggested that would still have jail as an option for sentencing convictions on a first conviction. Otherwise, jail is off the table until you reach your 4th violation. Along with that, this was an opportune time to make some other changes to our general crime and punishment approach. Among those are a provision that allows the court to require restitution. I think the court has been doing that, but this just clarifies and gives us some ordinance background for that. Also allowing the court to impose deferred sentences and deferred judgments. Again, the court has done that in the past, but this clarifies the basis for that in the ordinance. A provision limiting the possible jail sentence to 364 days instead of the statutory 1 year in order to avoid immigration complications from that. A provision revising the presently existing mandatory jail sentence for a second violation of the cruelty to animals ordinance to make it consistent with the other ordinance violations where jail is on the table once you're at your 4th. And a provision eliminating our outdated and unenforceable ordinance provisions on jailing for failing to pay a fine. And another thing I think that's very important to remember that we have discussed in the past as well is what I have termed the on-ramp and the off-ramp to this ordinance. So this doesn't just make a one-size-fits-all approach to what the judge must do for punishment for any given violation. The prosecutor will have an option to file a motion to treat any violation that would otherwise be treated as one that had no jail consequences, to actually bring that back on and put jail back on the table. And similarly, for one that under the ordinance would have jail as a consequence, the prosecutor could file a motion to take that off. So whatever the circumstances may be, it gives that prosecutorial discretion some scope to operate. Because smart as we all may think we are, we're not smart enough to foresee every single kind of situation that may come up on a matter that's pending before court. So with that, I do also want to highlight for you, we are still pursuing internal review of this ordinance. I had some comments back from Gene the other day, and so this may change a little between now and, if you approve it on first reading, between now and when it comes back to you on second reading, some fairly minor changes. We also have it out for a couple stakeholder comments as well, primarily to the ACLU, and they have indicated they'll get back to us with some comments.
The other item, we wanted to manage expectations. One of the reasons we are looking at this is the requirement for the defense attorney, and we took a look at what our budget has been doing in relation to that. We wanted to make sure council is aware, though, that there is a large percentage of our offenders that have probably already reached their fourth offense. So in those cases, this doesn't necessarily address that, but hopefully it will curb some of the other costs. But we wanted to make sure that we were being straightforward in managing those expectations as well.
Okay, Counselor Daniel?
Thank you. So Heather, with what you just said, with this coming into effect now, if someone currently has 3 offenses under their belt that would have had jail on the table before, but now don't, but then commits a 4th one, jail would still be on the table for that person, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Carson?
She answered my question.
Okay, good. Okay.
Now, if they can go 2 years without the offense, then they could get somewhat of a clean slate.
Okay, Counselor Griego?
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome, sir.
Eric, you told us to look at these violations, and you had already marked some of them that pretty much would constitute jail time, and I kind of went through some of this, and what's a BAWDY houses? Body?
Bawdy houses, house of ill repute,
I've never heard the term there.
a cat house.
Also, and you talked a little bit about
Other words I could use as well.
I think they used to have one of those in Texas.
You talked a little bit about the animal stuff. Poisoning of animals, would that be something that would fit under jail time? Because I know there's several items here that directly affect the treatment of animals, and I know we were going to discuss some of those to see if council thought that maybe they should have that same asterisk as you had with some of the other ones. And I think poisoning of an animal, I think, should bring some kind of jail time instead of just a fine. And I don't know if
The chief is sitting in the back nodding his head, so it sounds like he would agree with you that that's one that we should add to the jail time first off.
And also, I went back all the way to the back, and in sections 805, you have about 5 different 805s. Is that something, they all fall under that section, or how does that work? Because usually you go 806.
Are you at a MTC, is Model Traffic Code 805, or?
I'm in section, well, this one 805, pedestrian solicit rides and right-of-way, and
Okay, so that would be out of the Model Traffic Code, which I may or may not be able to pull up on my screen here, but generally when there's multiple 805s, or multiple any number, that means that there's a sub 1, sub 2, sub
Oh, okay.
3, which each have a different kind of element to it. So on that cheat sheet that you have, it doesn't break out those subchapters. It just calls them all 805, but they're all various different subchapters, which are slightly different offenses.
Okay. And that's it. Thank you, Eric.
Okay, Counselor Daniel and Counselor Hensley up your next.
I appreciate Councilor Griego's point about the poisoning of the animals, and I'm excited to hear the chief's perspective on that. But I do think that would be one of the times where we would expect the prosecutor also to exercise his or her discretion to say, Judge, I'm putting in a written request, motion to add jail as a possible offense, or possible sanction, right, for this type of offense. So I think it's really important that we look at all of those, counselors, but I also think it's really important to trust the prosecutorial discretion should we miss something. I don't want us to worry so much if we think, but I do agree with you about the dog or animal poisoning.
Excuse me, I was talking to Counselor, I didn't catch your first comment.
So I was just saying that I appreciated what you said about the animal poisoning,
Okay.
but I also think that that is one of the reasons for the prosecutorial discretion that we have. And so if we miss another one, I don't want us to worry as council that we have to foresee every possible event, because that's where the on-ramp and off-ramp, I think, sort of protects us as the city, our community, and assists the police department as well. That's just my perspective.
Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Hensley, and then we'll let Chief respond if it's okay with you all. Okay?
And I think I add to that because I know when I was looking at some of them, and I think one of the things that came to my mind was the cruelty to animals. And I think we can almost all of these say, well, there's this thing that can make it be. So that's why I also agree the on-ramp and off-ramp is a great tool so that we don't have to now get into the nitty-gritty on each one. So again, depending on that level, on any of these, there's always the potential to say, okay, this is actually going to have a potential for jail time. So I think that's awesome.
Thank you, Counselor Hensley. Chief, would you like to make a few comments?
I just came up, Mr. Mayor, just in case Eric needed some help, but he answered that question exactly the way I would have, so that's the only reason I walked up.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Counselor, okay? No questions? All right. Thank you, Chief. Council, what is your wish? What are your wishes? Yes.
Mayor, I move that we pass ordinance number 1-2018, an ordinance amending sections 1-17, 1-18, 3-10, and 13-54 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Alamosa concerning penalties for ordinance violations on first reading, and set for public hearing on February 7th, 2018 at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Counselor Brawls?
Well, no, I don't think it's perfect, but I think we need some experience on how this is going to be handled by the court and individuals. So I appreciate observing what happens as we go forward. Thank you.
I agree with you, and I too would like to thank staff as well as council for being open-minded during these times of looking at ways to enhance our system when it comes to activities that require penalties and ordinance violations. I'm really glad to see us moving in the right direction. So we will see how this ends up in time, but I think we're all are looking to do what's right, just and fair for our city, and I think we're headed in the right direction, so thank you. Start voting, please. Okay, Ms. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
All right, thank you. All right, the next up on the agenda is committee reports. Do we have any committee reports? Okay, no committee reports. Staff announcements.
Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome.
We do not have very many tonight. We do have some fun upcoming events that we want to make sure council remains aware of. The first one is the Rio Frio Ice Fest, which is January 26th through the 28th. They have moved the race off of the river, and so they're doing some promotion right now to make sure people are aware of what that route looks like and to still keep it a special event. So that information is out there. The other is getting more and more exciting as we get closer, and that's the ribbon cutting for the multi-purpose facility and ice rink. And so I can tell you I got a little bit of a sneak peek last night, and it's amazing. It's amazing to see what our older facility was, and you're in there, and it's, you know, it went from dreaming to an actual physical building. And so I'm really excited for the ribbon cutting and the public to be able to have that same experience. So that is January 31st at 1 p.m. And of course, we would encourage council to be there for that. We have been having a lot of discussions as staff behind the scenes on some upcoming needs for work sessions. So just to give you a little bit of a heads up, following tonight, we may be changing some of that, and you may be seeing some calendar changes from Holly over the next few days and some of our postings for some of those work sessions. February, we lose about 3 Wednesdays just due to travel and certain people not being here and those types of things. Along that line, I wanted to let council know I will not be here for the next meeting, the first meeting in February. The annual city manager conference is being held during that time, and I haven't attended the last few years, but I wanted to go ahead and make an effort to attend this year. So Chief Oakes will be sitting up here and serving in my place that night. We're trying to make it the hardest agenda possible for him, so we'll make it interesting. And other than that, I believe Eric had just a little bit of an update related to water and trial briefs.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Eric?
Yes, I just wanted to let you know that trial briefs were filed yesterday or the day before, I can't remember, in the water rules case. None of them directly address, well, one of them directly addresses our issue, but not in any way that concerns us. Our issue primarily being the rule that is directed toward how you measure sustainability in the confined aquifer. We like the rule. This brief doesn't like the rule, but it addresses issues that we don't really care about. I just bring that up because if any of you want to see copies of that briefing or anything, let me know, and I'm happy to email them to you, but I didn't want to just bury you with stuff that you didn't have any interest in.
Thank you, Eric. Council.
So I can read it, if you email me. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Hensley?
So back to the ice rink. So definitely a lot of community members have let me know how excited they are. I had mentioned, because I think it came in one of our memos, that right after the ribbon cutting, people could start skating. So people are asking me cost, the times, things like that. Is that posted yet, or?
That is all on the recreation website.
Okay,
so I
good.
would direct them to that website.
Perfect.
It has all of that information on there.
Awesome, thank you.
Councilor Daniel, Councilor Vigil up next.
Thank you. I just had a question. I think the multi-purpose facility was a huge deal for previous council, and I know there are 2 members who were a major part of that. Have we set out an invitation to them to be present? And if not, I would hope that the city would extend that invitation to them, as they were a huge part in making that happen.
So you're just referencing any council members when we started this
Yes.
process, make sure we invite them?
I think
That's a
so.
great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, too. Councilor Vigil?
Thank you. Going off what Ms. Hensley said about the costs and that, we promised people that this was going to be very affordable for all kids. We're still in line with that?
Yes. And Andy, if you want to come up and talk with the cost, I'm glad you're very clear on the word affordable, because I think some people heard something different and have been saying something different, such as free, which is not anything that we've ever said. My understanding, having a child go through it for the first time, is we got all of the equipment for $25. And Andy, if you want to, and we're talking hockey specifically.
Okay. Yeah, I'll clarify that a little bit. So the $25 is a deposit, actually, an equipment deposit, but the cost of a program for a child to play in the City Hockey League is $45. That's probably subsidized 300%. I mean, just to buy that equipment alone would be between $200 and $300. And we've had a little bit of uptick in registration. We're excited about that. Back to costs, you guys were very clear about keeping it affordable. Traditionally, it's been about $3 to rent a pair of skates and go out on the other facility. I think we're looking at about maybe $4 for adults and keeping it at $3 for kids. $2 if you have your own skates. You know, now that we have this nice facility, we do want to have a mentality of everybody contributing to it. So as before you didn't pay if you had your own equipment, now you're going to pay $2 or $1.70 if you buy a punch card with 10 times on it. So we're of the feeling it's affordable, but we'll certainly revisit it if public feedback is that it's not. Anyway, that's a little snapshot of it and of the costs.
Councilor Carson and Councilor Vigil.
I had a follow-up on that. And what if we have kids who want to play in the hockey league who can't afford $45? Are there scholarships available and that type of stuff?
Traditionally, yes, we've done about a 50% scholarship with just reduced evidence of reduced lunch qualification through the schools. And we could do some at 100%, but traditionally we've done a 50% to a handful of kids each season, and we would certainly continue that and even go on a case-by-case basis. I think staff is with you that for this to be successful in this community, it has to be affordable, and we have to balance revenue generation with affordability.
Thank you, Andy.
Councilor Carson.
Andy, and I apologize because I haven't looked at the website, but I was just I was wondering what other skating type services are going to be offered. I saw something about lessons, and is that going to be for general ice skating? Are there going to be open ice days when people can go skate and not be involved in hockey?
Yes, certainly. So, you know, we have several different, we call it free skate or general public skating, and, you know, that comprises the majority of the time on the weekends. We'll have, you know, youth hockey games like Saturday morning, but most of the other time is then public skating. And then during the week, we're analyzing, you know, youth hockey practices take up most of the weekday evenings, but we're still analyzing where can we squeeze in some public skating time. So in terms of type of lessons, we're looking at offering figure skating lessons, pleasure skating, power skating, something hockey players look at. Of course, we have to find the right people to be able to teach these things, but we already right now are actively seeking instructors, and that's out there on the city's website.
I saw it in the paper today. How many are you looking for?
Probably 3 to 4.
It's going to be a shift type thing?
A shift type thing, and we're, you know, we want to be proactive. We want to get people out there who haven't done it before, and low-cost lessons are part of that equation.
And are you guys going to be doing like a skate rental, you know, do you have that component set up?
You know, we've done some lessons before, and it was pretty low cost. It was $5 for the lesson, including the rentals. I think we were looking at a little increase, like $5 for a child with a rental, and then maybe $7 for an adult. So again, still keeping it as affordable as we can, but now realizing we will have a little bit of increased staffing costs running that program.
Thank you.
Councilor Griego.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if I missed this. So $45 is going to get you what?
$45.
Is that for the whole season?
Yes, sir. That's a 6-week youth hockey program with maybe 6 games on the weekends and 2 practices a week, all for $45. And the equipment's included except for a stick and skates. We usually have them get on their own, but we often have a trade-in program so they can trade skates in or whatever. But usually the first pair is on the family.
So what other equipment do you need?
Well, we got a stick and skates, so it included stick and skates for some kids.
Yeah, we have tubs of old skates, and usually they start with a pair of skates and can trade it in. But no, $45 is basically everything. Usually you don't get a stick, but there's exceptions to that.
So when you say equipment, like what?
What is it? What does that involve?
Yeah.
Sure, it's a full helmet.
Okay.
With a face mask and shoulder pads, hip pads, kind of shorts that have pads in them, shin guards, elbow pads, gloves.
Oh my God.
A garter belt, believe it or not, to keep these pants up on your 5-year-old.
There you go.
You guys are gonna have to come see some youth games. It's pretty cool.
And they probably had like 50 sticks, just so you know. I was not the only one that got a stick.
Well, that's great. Thank you. I just didn't understand what it all encompassed and stuff, so thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Councilor Vihil?
Thank you. I just had to ask this question. Is there, the ribbon cutting's on January 31st in the middle of the day? I won't be able to go because I'm working. Is there a reason why we chose that day and time?
Primarily, that was chosen as a nod to all of our grantors and donors who are, in some cases, coming from hundreds of miles away, where they can get there, be a part of it, and go home in the same day.
The other is we were trying to figure out how we can get it opened as soon as possible. And the Rio Frio Fest is the weekend before. There's just no physical ability for our staff to do the Rio Frio Fest and do a grand opening, trying out everything new with the new facility and that type of thing as well. So it would have been nice if we could have had it open a week earlier and not be competing with Rio Frio, but from a staffing perspective, we just couldn't do both.
Andy, I too would like to thank you and staff for keeping everything affordable for the people in the San Luis Valley. And I say the San Luis Valley intentionally because I believe this recreational center that we're building is going to invite people from all over the San Luis Valley and different parts of Colorado. I was in New York City during the holidays, and I went to go skate at Rockefeller Center. And the prices were like $35 a person, so I didn't go skate. So I decided that I would just wait until we open up our facility to go skating. So I can tell you that it's very reasonable and affordable, and that was just general admission. They had the VIP, which was about $125 a person if you wanted to pay a little bit more. But I say that just to say this, by us keeping the multi-purpose center affordable for people, that's going to allow families from different parts of our community in the valley to come and bring their family to an outing to where they can get exercise, they can build family bonding, and also have fun at the same time. So this is really a huge deal for our community as a whole, and I'm so thankful and grateful. And when Councilor Griego was talking about what do you get for $45, and that's important too. The hockey team, that equipment is expensive, and I can assure you that it would be a challenge for most of us here on council to pay for a child to buy all of that equipment that's required for them to play hockey. So by us helping to reduce that cost on those parents, and that's saving a big, huge burden on those parents. So thank you for that.
And thank you. And those before us got a lot of that equipment donated, if the public didn't know that. Like Denver University gave some of that. The Taos program gave some of that equipment. So we've had some help along the way.
Okay, Councilor Griego?
Councilor Vihil talked about a scholarship program. Is that exists for all different programs that you have? And
does.
How do you donate to that, or how do you balance it out and stuff?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that if anyone's ever inquired about donating directly to that. In reality, we've just managed how many cases we've had that on and been able to budget for it and be able to handle it without soliciting any kind of donations.
Oh, that'd be something that, if somebody knew where you can donate, and you can take from there, it would help offset a lot of stuff, and maybe even buy some sticks and skates and stuff.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Okay, next we have council comments. Do we have any council comments? Counselor Daniel.
Thank you. I just had an announcement for this weekend. The SLV Women's March is this Saturday at 10. It's for women and allies. There will be a panel discussion at about 11 in Carson Auditorium. And I'm pretty excited about the planning that went into that. So if you can come march, that is wonderful, or come support the people on the panel, that would be great. And then also at the same time, by accident, TriStar basketball is happening. And so registration starts at 9 for that. The event starts at 10:30. And magically, I'm going to be at both of them. And so we are going to figure this out. But if you have kids between the ages of 8 and 13 who want to come try out their basketball skills, it's a free event. And then the Women's March is also free. So we hope to see you at either one of those or both of them.
Counselor Vijo.
Thank you. I've been in contact with a lady who lives right across the street from the Student Union building, and she has been pretty upset about students who are parking in her driveway. There are many times where she can't get in and out of her driveway, or when she's hired a plumber or any type of other service to happen to her house, they often can't find a place to park either. She has asked help from Adams State, help from the Adams State Police, and it's gone nowhere. So I want to bring it to you all, and I'll talk to Heather and Chief about it later with more details on that. But she's getting pretty desperate about some things, so if we can help her out, that'd be great.
Thank you, Counselor Vijo. Counselor Brawls.
Yeah, well, excuse me. Yeah, I'm excited about the ice rink and everything that's going on there, so great job. I think it's a great addition to our community. I'm sorry I won't be able to attend the ribbon cutting. I'll be out of town, but I give you my blessing on it, so have a good time. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Brawls. Counselor Griego.
The comment on community gatherings, was there a community gathering tonight to talk
La
about?
Puente, I believe it was winter visual, but it was during our work session. I don't believe we could have made it to it. I believe it was at 6:30 on State Avenue. I think I read that in the paper.
Yeah, and also, Mayor, that there was another community group getting together to talk about the drug situation, and I read it somewhere, and I don't know if we're sending somebody there or, counselors are
I
going
think
to go.
if you're referring to the communities that care,
Correct.
and yes, the chief will be part of the panel for that
Okay.
discussion.
And that's when,
Tuesday, I believe. Am I
Tuesday at, I believe.
I'm on that board too, Counselor Griego, so
Okay.
I'll be there as well, and I
Okay.
believe the chief is going to be there.
All right.
But thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome, sir. Counselor Hensley.
I just want to congratulate Kel Mortensen. He actually is the new executive director for the marketing district, and so it was a really tough, I know they had a tough time making that decision, but had some great candidates, but he is the new executive director.
Yeah, and just to provide the information to Counselor Griego's, it is Tuesday. It's Alamosa Communities That Care Community Forum meeting. It's at the Ortega Middle School, and it's at 7 p.m.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any other comments? Yes, Counselor Daniel.
Sorry, just a reminder that I will be out of town again next week, so we will need the conference call for next week's work session as well. It did work really well for me last time to have all of the information by email ahead of time, but I did have a hard time hearing a little bit, so I don't know if we could try to place the phone in a different spot. But I appreciate us being able to do that, so thank you.
And I would just like to add to Counselor Daniel's earlier comments in regard to the prior counselors who were a part of conversation in regards to the multi-purpose center. I would hope that we wouldn't leave out even the ones like Counselor Greg Gillespie and Counselor Rusty Johnson. I believe they were in some of the initial talks as well, along with Mayor Lucero and Mike Stefano as well. Okay, thank you. Good. All right. Time for overtime, Council. Up next, we have executive session in pursuit of CRS subsection 24-6-402, 4A, to discuss the acquisition of property for First Street right-of-way, and second, and whether council is open to entertaining a proposal for sale of a particular parcel of city property.
Mayor, I move that we go into executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-4024A.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Okay. Start voting, please. Okay, Ms. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, after the executive session is over, we will return back here to chambers, and there will be no further discussions at that time. Thank you.